I think the movie is so funny and is so touching that I think they'll be carried away. That's been the pulse that I've been trying to keep a sense on. You know, when they're screening it all over the world, it's like, it's amazing. The audience goes crazy.
They made a movie about drag queens driving across America, but the real drama wasn't on screen. It was behind the scenes. We are talking about scandals, near disasters, and one actor who almost quit. From strange production twists to facts that nearly changed the movie forever, these are 20 weirdest things you probably didn't know about To Wong Foo. Number 5 will definitely shock you. 20. Patrick Swayze pranked Chris Penn with a strategic corncob. Do you remember the tense sequence where the predatory Sheriff Dollard pulls over the bright yellow Cadillac on a lonely country highway? In this scene, the corrupt officer aggressively approaches the car and attempts to assault Vida Boheme, leading to a sudden moment of shocking discovery. What really makes the scene memorable is the expression on the lawman's face. He's completely caught off guard, and the mix of panic and confusion is impossible to miss. You see, to break the heavy on-set tension and get an entirely genuine reaction from co-star Chris Penn, Patrick Swayze planned a hilarious joke. Right before the director yelled action, Swayze secretly concealed a large raw corn cob deep inside the folds of his elaborate dress. When Penn reached under the skirt to feel up the character, he unexpectedly grabbed the hidden vegetable. His sudden expression of absolute horror was completely real, causing him to break character as the entire crew broke out into uncontrollable laughter. This clever prank injected a much-needed burst of levity into an otherwise dark and highly uncomfortable scene. Coming up next is this very famous and gorgeous model that graced our screen in this film. 19. Naomi Campbell's cameo and RuPaul's sky-high runway costume. During that same dazzling opening sequence, a couple of famous faces stunned the audience with unforgettable appearances. Viewers witnessed a breathtaking supermodel interacting directly with Noxeema Jackson, followed by a towering performer swinging down from the ceiling in an outrageous outfit. These moments provide a double dose of star power that elevates the glamour of the entire competition. Supermodel Naomi Campbell made a legendary cameo, asking Noxeema Jackson how she could look as beautiful as her, which prompted Wesley Snipes' famous unscripted ad-lib line telling her she could not. Meanwhile, long before building a global media empire, RuPaul appeared as the character Rachel Tensions, descending from the roof on a swing. RuPaul wore a towering, elaborate gown explicitly patterned after the Confederate flag, which she aggressively stripped off on stage to reveal a stunning outfit underneath. This radical, subversive political statement was a massive risk for a mainstream studio movie in 1995. By slapping together designer dresses and some seriously biting political jokes, this movie basically told mainstream America to take a seat and think about stuff. It was like a fashion show with a side of "what the heck are we even doing?" 18. Coca-Cola welcomed them. If you look around the small town in the movie, you will notice prominent vintage signage and classic beverage machines scattered across the landscape. The iconic red and white branding of Coca-Cola anchors the eccentric characters in a familiar setting. This strategic product placement creates a beautiful visual contrast between the avant-garde queens and traditional symbols of classic Americana. But, realistically, the soda machines were a last-minute corporate rescue mission. Originally, the fast food giant McDonald's had signed a massive, lucrative promotional deal with Universal Pictures to market the movie nationwide. As the filming schedule drew closer, corporate executives panicked over the threat of right-wing boycotts regarding a film about drag performers, causing them to abruptly cancel the entire contract. Thankfully, the executives at Coca-Cola recognized the incredible heart of the project and stepped into the void. They provided full corporate backing and integrated their famous branding into the tiny town of Loma, Nebraska. However, getting corporate backing was nothing compared to the absolute nightmare of finding a director willing to stake their entire reputation on 3 men in gowns. 17. A pregnant woman directed the movie. If you remember the movie's opening scene, you'll recall the lively chaos backstage at the annual drag pageant. The camera glides through a crowded room filled with performers, crew members, and constant activity, capturing the excitement and energy before finally settling on the main characters. On screen, everything feels effortless and perfectly coordinated. What viewers didn't see, however, was the intense pressure building behind the scenes as the crew worked to pull off the ambitious sequence. The thing is, finding a leader for this production was incredibly tough. When the script circulated through Hollywood, multiple prominent male directors refused to touch it because they feared a cross-dressing comedy would destroy their mainstream commercial careers. Fortunately, director Beeban Kidron saw the potential in the screenplay and pitched her vision directly to Steven Spielberg to secure the job. After securing it, Kidron directed the entire production while heavily pregnant in the hot Nebraska summer. She masterfully managed the large-scale shoot and the massive egos of her leading men, eventually giving birth on the final night of filming. After Kidron pulled off this huge studio success, Hollywood execs totally changed their tune about who could lead those more sensitive or unconventional movies. Her amazing toughness showed that stories with different perspectives really take off when they've got a director with a unique vision calling the shots. And this success opened new doors for female filmmakers to command large studio budgets, showing the entire entertainment industry that an inclusive vision could win at the box office. 16. Robin Williams read the whole script on a plane. Early in the journey, the main characters encounter a flamboyant, fast-talking New York stylemaker named John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. This brief, electrifying interaction provides a burst of high-energy comedy that perfectly propels the characters forward into their road trip adventure. The actor on screen commands the frame with effortless charisma, completely stealing the scene for a few unforgettable moments. This memorable cameo happened entirely by accident on a commercial flight. Before the film was fully cast, Robin Williams found himself sitting directly next to the creative team. Intrigued by the screenplay, Williams took the pages and spent the flight performing the script out loud in the cabin, creating unique voices for multiple characters to entertain the flight crew. He loved the project so much that he agreed to appear in the film, refusing any screen credit to ensure the spotlight remained entirely on the main cast. This uncredited role brought a ton of star power and credibility to a film that could have easily flopped, all without stealing the spotlight from the main story. It was great that Williams used his huge influence to back a movie focused on queer characters. 15. Famous men who almost put on the high heels. The main plot of the movie follows 3 glamorous drag queens who get stranded in a conservative, small Midwestern town during a cross-country road trip. The trio displays a deep, natural connection as they stand proudly together in their colorful outfits. Their distinct personalities click perfectly, making it almost impossible to picture any other actors playing these parts. Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo brought the characters to life so completely that audiences assumed these roles belonged to them from day one. But little did we know, the actual casting process was a crazy scramble through Hollywood's biggest leading men. Because a mainstream studio had never made a big-budget comedy about drag queens before, the casting directors looked at the biggest action heroes and heartthrobs of the 1990s. The studio seriously considered major stars such as Tom Cruise, Mel Gibson, Robert Downey Jr., and Johnny Depp. The creative team wanted to see if these hyper-masculine leading men could successfully transform themselves into convincing, elegant women on the silver screen. The most surprising audition came from future action icon Viggo Mortensen, who advanced remarkably far into the selection process for the lead role of Vida Boheme. Mortensen took the audition so seriously that he dressed up in a high-end Chanel outfit resembling a Jackie Kennedy look, paired with voluminous, styled hair. To practice his walk before walking into the studio audition room, he spent an afternoon strolling down Broadway in the middle of New York City in full drag. He was so convincing that everyday pedestrians on the street simply whistled at him without ever realizing he was a famous male actor. With the final trio locked in, the real challenge began: turning hyper-masculine Hollywood action stars into believable, elegant queens. And the audition room got incredibly emotional. 14. Patrick Swayze won Vida with his own tragic life story. When you watch Vida Boheme in this movie, you can definitely see how she gracefully guides her friends through difficult situations with a calm, maternal elegance. She carries herself with a gentle authority that makes you completely forget about the actor's past tough guy action roles. Vida totally nailed it in this movie by bringing this real warmth that holds the whole story together. You can practically see it in every scene. However, what most people didn't know is director Beeban Kidron initially rejected Patrick Swayze because his hyper-masculine history in films like Roadhouse made her fear he would turn the character into a ridiculous parody. But Swayze proved her wrong. During his final screen test, Swayze threw away the written script entirely. He looked straight into the lens and opened up about his painful childhood relationship with his mother, Patsy Swayze, a strict choreographer who pushed him brutally hard. This raw, tearful honesty and his natural dancer's poise completely shocked the production team. In a twinkle of an eye, his emotional breakthrough changed how Hollywood viewed masculine leading men. Swayze proved that action stars could tap into profound, authentic vulnerability without losing their core audience appeal. 13. Wesley Snipes crafted Noxeema from 3 real-life icons. Now let's take a look at the scene where Noxeema Jackson confidently lectures her companions about the absolute importance of style and self-respect. On screen, she carries an unmistakable, sharp-witted attitude mixed with a deeply protective nature. Her grand presence feels layered, completely removing any trace of the actor's famous action roles and delivering an unforgettable, grounded performance for audiences everywhere. Despite being fresh off dominant action projects like Passenger 57, Wesley Snipes refused to treat Noxeema as a cheap caricature. He meticulously built her persona by blending traits from 4 real women in his life: his grandmother, legendary entertainer Bette Midler, the New York voguing scene, and Hollywood trailblazer Dorothy Dandridge. He spent hours observing community spaces in New York to ensure Dorothy's posture, tone, and delivery felt completely authentic to the audience. Noxeema's on-screen obsession with Dorothy Dandridge was an intentional choice by Snipes to honor the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. 12. John Leguizamo was specifically sought out for the role. The energetic, emotional performance of Chichi Rodriguez was peak because she struggled to find her true identity throughout the road trip. Chichi brings a fiery, youthful spirit to the screen that balances the refined nature of her older mentors. This frantic energy provides the essential spark that keeps the group's dynamic exciting and unpredictable. In reality, Leguizamo's path to the role was much more straightforward, as he was the filmmaker's top choice from the beginning. Director Beeban Kidron and the producers actively sought him out because they needed an actor with a chameleon-like ability to capture a young, fierce, and emotionally vulnerable personality. His extensive history playing female characters in his award-winning off-Broadway solo shows gave him a competitive edge that left other actors behind. However, the real audition process for Leguizamo focused heavily on the chemistry with Swayze and Wesley Snipes to ensure the group's dynamic felt like an authentic, tightly knit chosen family. At the time, Leguizamo was mentored by a prominent Puerto Rican drag queen from the South Bronx named Laricitza Dumont, who taught him how to execute a proper walk and use hand gestures convincingly. This total dedication brought an unhinged energy to the screen that defined the movie's comedic pacing. Leguizamo proved that method acting was not reserved exclusively for serious dramas, showing it could elevate mainstream comedies as well. But booking the roles was the easy part. To make them look like real drag queens on screen, the studio sent them to a boot camp that nearly broke them physically. 11. The drag boot camp taught by real queens was brutal. If you watch the spectacular introductory scenes where the main queens glide effortlessly across the stage during the grand competition, you'll definitely notice their dedication and professionalism. The characters in the movie possess a mesmerizing level of grace, moving their hands flawlessly and balancing on towering high heels without a single stumble. Also, the presentation looks utterly flawless, convincing everyone that these performers spent their entire lives mastering the runway. But, achieving that effortless style required an incredibly intense training process. The production team avoided standard Hollywood movement coaches, making the three leads spend time in New York City underground to train the lead actors. This decision resulted in a punishing, multi-week boot camp that pushed the masculine action stars to their absolute physical limits. Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo spent hours adjusting their natural center of gravity and walking in 4-inch stilettos. Their athletic frames took a beating, resulting in severe muscle cramps, bleeding toes, and bruised ribs from the tightly laced corsets. This dedication to physical preparation completely changed how major film studios approached the art of drag. 10. Steven Spielberg bought it, then made it kinder. Think about the warm, fairy tale landscape of the fictional town of Snydersville, Nebraska, where the locals slowly learn to shed their deep-seated prejudices. On screen, the heavy burdens of rural life are softened by bright colors, gorgeous dresses, and light-hearted comedic beats. The entire cinematic world feels welcoming, safe, and heavily focused on the core concept of community redemption. But then, this gentle atmosphere was a massive shift from the original vision. When an Amblin Entertainment executive passed the script to legendary director Steven Spielberg, the Hollywood icon fell in love with it and greenlit the project. However, the initial draft was incredibly dark, detailing severe Midwestern homophobia, intense police brutality, and a deeply bleak reality for queer individuals. Well, Spielberg stepped in directly and demanded that the team soften the edges of the narrative. He guided the pacing so the characters never had to over-explain their identities, letting their raw charisma run the show. Spielberg's direct intervention permanently altered how major studio movies handled sensitive LGBTQ themes during the mid-1990s. Turning a grueling social drama into a heartwarming commercial comedy allowed To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, to reach a massive audience. 9. Patrick Swayze and John Leguizamo almost brawled in full drag. In the movie, there is an emotional moment when the characters are stranded on a dark, desolate road at night, right next to their broken-down Cadillac. Here, Vida Boheme completely crushes Chi-Chi Rodriguez's spirit by telling her she is nothing more than a boy in a dress instead of a true drag princess. The raw, tearful argument that followed feels incredibly intense, carrying a realistic personal friction that kept the audience completely locked into the scene. Their constant verbal sparring gives the impression of two fiercely stubborn personalities constantly testing each other. But what we didn't know is the intense screen energy was fueled by massive, real-life tension between Patrick Swayze and John Leguizamo. Swayze was a classically trained dancer who demanded strict obedience to the written script and carefully planned choreography. On the other hand, Leguizamo was a chaotic improvisational comedian who constantly threw out unscripted lines to steal the scene. This clash of artistic styles eventually caused a massive, screaming argument on the set. The situation deteriorated so quickly that the two men almost engaged in a full physical fistfight while wearing elaborate ball gowns and heavy studio makeup. This behind-the-scenes friction actually worked to the great advantage of the final film. The genuine irritation between the two leads translated perfectly into their characters' complex, evolving sisterhood on screen. While the actors were fighting each other and pulling wild pranks on set, a massive multi-million-dollar legal storm was brewing that threatened to shut down the entire movie. 8. Real golf legend Chi Rodriguez sued to stop the movie. We all know John Leguizamo lights up the camera as Chi Rodriguez, a sassy character full of energy. In the film, the central trio of drag queens drives a Cadillac across the country. Audiences watched a celebration of identity, unaware that a real-world sporting icon was watching this exact same footage with pure rage. Shortly after the film premiered in September 1995, legendary professional golfer and World Golf Hall of Fame member Juan Antonio Chi Rodriguez slapped Universal Pictures and Amblin with a massive defamation lawsuit. The 59-year-old sports icon argued that having a flamboyant drag queen character bearing his name damaged his pristine reputation as a professional sportsman. With this, Rodriguez sought an injunction to halt distribution entirely. Because the $63 million production was already playing nationwide, the studio scrambled behind closed doors and settled out of court on undisclosed terms within weeks. 7. The Secret Backup Plan. Carol Lynley was the alternative to Julie Newmar. The entire storyline hinges on one specific object that changes hands early in the narrative. In the beginning, the audience sees the main characters inside a Chinese restaurant, staring up at a framed, autographed photograph hanging on the wall. This item becomes their sacred travel token, a symbol of glamour that guides their entire cross-country trip. The camera focuses intently on the signature of Hollywood star Julie Newmar, making her image the actual heart of the production. The characters carry this photo everywhere, treating her like a protective saint and talking to the portrait for inspiration. So, because her name is repeated constantly in the dialogue and serves as the literal title of the film, failing to secure her permission meant the studio could not use any of the footage they planned. It would have forced the crew to discard weeks of work, rewrite the script from scratch, and reshoot major parts of the film. However, securing the legal rights to use her name and likeness was an uphill battle for the production team. During the mid-1990s, a mainstream studio film focusing entirely on drag queens was a completely uncharted territory. Entertainment agents and managers were incredibly protective of their clients' public images, fearing that a movie of this nature might mock the actress or cause a massive public scandal. Because of this, the producers faced constant delays and roadblocks from cautious corporate lawyers who hesitated to sign the paperwork. Out of sheer panic as filming neared, the studio opened quiet negotiations with Fantasy Island star Carol Lynley as a temporary backup option. But even if the negotiations fell through completely, the production was still prepared to swap Julie's photos on set and force the characters to reference her instead, altering the movie title to honor Carol Lynley. 6. The studio's desperate war to rename the movie Ladies' Night. When audiences look at promotional posters or the opening credits, the first thing they look for is a title that commands attention. The film's name and dialogue really capture the unique, dramatic vibe of the character's world. It makes the project stand out from typical Hollywood comedies and gives it a special feel right from the start. However, Universal Pictures marketing executives absolutely loathed the long, eccentric title, To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, claiming it was completely unmarketable. The studio waged a relentless internal war against screenwriter Douglas Carter Beane, trying to force him to change the name to something commercial, like Ladies' Night. But Beane successfully fought off the corporate suits, arguing that the bizarre title was the core soul of the film because it served as an essential metaphor for finding beauty in unexpected places. Beane's absolute refusal to back down protected the creative integrity of the script against heavy corporate pressure. Securing that unique title was a massive victory, paving the way for the production team to assemble an unforgettable cast of underground pioneers. Kicking off this next phase at number 5. 5. Webster Hall was packed with pre-Drag Race drag royalty. The movie opens with a massive explosion of energy, color, and music as the camera sweeps through a packed nightclub. Here, viewers can see dozens of gorgeous drag queens cheering, dancing, and competing on stage for the coveted title of Drag Queen of the Year. The atmosphere feels electric, vibrant, and completely authentic to the audience watching. To achieve this genuine atmosphere, the production team skipped standard Hollywood extra casting entirely. They went directly to the actual nightlife scene, filming on location at the legendary Webster Hall in New York City. The venue was packed to the brim, with iconic pioneers of the 1990s underground queer subculture, creating a living historical snapshot of the community. The crowd and minor roles featured monumental icons such as Lady Bunny, Joey Arias, Misunderstood, Flotilla DeBarge, Miss Coco Peru, Lady Kateria, and a young Candace Kane in her earliest major screen appearance, bringing unparalleled real-world legitimacy to the set. This deliberate casting choice captured a rare moment in queer history before drag became a global reality television phenomenon. 4. The 1935 Manual. Look closely at the screen during the early scenes when the characters are packing their bags. You see them grab a framed, autographed picture of actress Julie Newmar right off a restaurant wall. This specific item becomes their guiding light and traveling companion on their massive cross-country journey, providing the foundational spark for the movie title. You see, screenwriter Douglas Carter Beane did not create this concept out of thin air. In the mid-1980s, he spotted a real autographed photo of Julie Newmar addressed to a bartender named Wong Foo at a Times Square Chinese restaurant called the China Bowl. Years later, he watched a toxic, homophobic, right-wing propaganda video warning that drag queens were invading small towns. Instead of getting angry, Beane flipped the script to create a beautiful comedy about acceptance. To build the sophisticated dialogue, he used an outdated 1935 women's etiquette manual he randomly discovered at the local library. This bizarre mixture of a real restaurant relic, political propaganda, and historical etiquette guides transformed To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar into something unique. It proved that brilliant art can repurpose intolerance into beautiful, subversive storytelling. 3. The sacred metaphor, the hidden spiritual meaning of Wong Foo. Late in the film, the characters often reflect on their journey and the lessons they have learned while trapped in the small town. The audience watches these larger-than-life figures display a deep sense of peace and wisdom that extends far beyond fashion. Their conversations hint at a grander purpose, turning a standard road trip comedy into something far more meaningful. While the name Wong Foo came from a real autographed photo on a Times Square restaurant wall, screenwriter Douglas Carter Beane infused the name with hidden spiritual philosophy. In early drafts of the script and a notable deleted scene, Vida Boheme explicitly explains to her friends that Wong Foo is actually a metaphor for God or the divine universe. Beane intended the full phrase to represent a profound spiritual test about learning to have unconditional gratitude for life and humanity, no matter how harsh, restrictive, or judgmental the surrounding world becomes toward your identity. Embedding a deep spiritual message within a drag comedy completely elevated the narrative framework of the movie. It challenged the standard Hollywood tropes of the era by framing drag queens not as objects of ridicule, but as enlightened spiritual guides. This philosophical layer helped To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar resonate on a much deeper human level, changing how mainstream audiences connected with queer characters. But bringing this beautiful spiritual message to life required the actors to endure a level of physical suffering that the cameras expertly hid from the audience. 2. 4.5 months of costume torture and severe skin rashes. The reality behind those beautiful shots was an absolute nightmare of physical endurance. This was filmed for 4.5 grueling months during an intensely humid summer on location across Nebraska and New Jersey. The combination of thick, heavy pan-stick studio makeup, constant sweat, and oppressive heat caused the leading men to break out in painful, severe skin rashes, requiring full-time dermatologists on set to treat their faces daily. Furthermore, wearing highly restrictive, tightly laced corsets and high heels for up to 14 hours a day caused the actors bruised ribs, bleeding feet, and intense joint pain. This extreme physical damage permanently altered their natural walking gaits for several weeks after the production finally wrapped. This intense physical sacrifice completely redefined how mainstream actors approached transformative roles in Hollywood. It proved that performing in drag required the same level of elite athletic stamina and dedication as any high-intensity action movie. And now, for the most significant revelation, the #1 spot that completely reshapes how we view the history of modern cinema. 1. The box office lie. Why it was never just a cult movie. When you look at streaming platforms today, this movie often gets put in the obscure indie category, hanging out with cult favorites that took decades to find an audience. This makes it sound like it was a small, overlooked film that struggled initially, which isn't the full picture. This common historical narrative is a total fabrication. In reality, To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, was an absolute mainstream theatrical juggernaut upon its release in September 1995. The movie snatched the coveted #1 spot at the domestic box office during its opening weekend and managed to hold that top position for 2 consecutive weeks, beating out massive studio competitors. It pulled in over $36 million domestically, which translates to roughly $70 million in adjusted modern figures. This massive commercial triumph occurred because straight, mainstream American audiences across the country enthusiastically purchased tickets, filling theaters to embrace a story centered on queer joy and drag artistry. This massive box office victory completely shattered the long-standing studio myth that progressive queer films were financial risks for Hollywood. It proved that widespread audiences were ready to support inclusive stories when presented with genuine heart and elite entertainment value. From intense backlot brawls to historic box office triumphs, To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, permanently changed the landscape of cinema. Which of these shocking production secrets blew your mind the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your favorite scenes, and remember to smash that subscribe button. For more content similar to this one, click on the next video on your screen.